good afternoon, evening, day, wherever you are in the world on the internet. And today we are looking at the spring edition of Salonpreneur Magazine, and I'm joined by Wendy Garcarz, the chair lady. And we are going to be talking about her article, which is thinking outside the box when you feel boxed in, which I think is just so, timed so perfectly for where we're all sitting. And I know when Wendy wrote this, we weren't in the situation that we're currently in worldwide. She wrote this, I think you wrote this before Christmas, actually, didn't you?
I did, yeah, I did.
Yeah. So yeah, you must have, and I know you're a bit of a futurist, but you must
I am.
really had your finger on the pulse of what was about to happen. And obviously since then, just for context, we're now in a really weird situation with the US and Iran and Israel, and everyone's feeling it a bit. So, and I think Wendy and I were saying just before we came on to record that, the whole world, everybody's is just sort of on a bit of a precipice at the moment, waiting to see what happens.
Yeah.
And that's going to add into this whole feeling of feeling a bit boxed in. So, yeah. Anyway, welcome, Wendy. Me waffling on.
Thank you very much. Lovely to be here again.
Yeah, I know. I enjoy our conversations. They're always so insightful. So many interesting things that you always come out with. So, difficult economic times. It's just mind-blowing what's going on at the moment. And I'm sure you've got an awful lot with your knowledge and experience and stuff of how we can kind of continue business whilst facing such adversity.
I think for me, one of the reasons that I decided to do the article was that when you are caught up in the sort of economic conditions, political conditions, geopolitics that we're seeing across the world, all of those, it's terribly easy, particularly with the doom scrolling that goes on. It's terribly easy to sort of paint yourself into a corner and just, almost want to give up because things can appear from day to day as hopeless, really.
Yeah.
And in my experience, and you will know this, Sue, if you've been in business for a long time, 30, 40 years, maybe in some cases, what you realise is although the circumstances change and although the actors change, we've seen this all before.
Yeah.
We've been through wars before. We've been through recessions before. We've been through governments that we intensely dislike and disagree with. We've been through tough times. We've seen it all before. And the thing that gets us out of this when the circumstances change, and they will,
Yeah.
the thing that gets us out of it is being able to think outside the box, is look
Yeah.
for the possibilities and look for the opportunities rather than just see the sort of negative stuff all of the time. And it struck me that this was a very timely article to write because we all have the capability to do that, to look at things, to reframe them, to see them differently, to look for the possibilities rather than just see all of the doom and gloom. So I thought it might be helpful for people at this
And
moment.
it's now so perfect. I mean, it's always a good thing to know anyway, because I think in day-to-day business, you can feel quite boxed in and can feel, if you've got something that's going on, just in your own universe
Yeah.
that isn't working out, or you've got, I don't know, family issues or health issues or whatever, all of those things, or staff issues, whatever it is, can make you feel that it's all not quite as worthwhile as it felt a year ago.
Yeah.
And maybe it's time to throw the towel in. But generally, I mean, I know when I had my salon, there was several times over the years where different things occurred. I mean, COVID being the biggest one of them all.
Yeah.
But just, having staff that I'd taken on that didn't work out as well as I'd hoped they were going to. And you have to try and you've got to think on your feet, haven't you, and work out, this isn't going to stop me running my business, but how can I adjust and how can I rebalance where I'm at?
And I tell you, one of the things that sort of set me on this route is that I'm doing a lot of stuff at the moment with the Thought Leader Academy, which is a sort of a space that encourages very experienced specialists and entrepreneurs and experts, a space that encourages them to think. And one of the things that struck me is that things seem worse when we stop thinking for ourselves. And we're in this perfect storm at the moment
Yeah.
where we're spoon-fed information on an hourly basis through social media. Most of us are using AI to some degree. So we've got a bot going on in the background talking to us about all sorts of stuff.
Mm.
We've got the sort of generic feeling of sort of flatness that we're experiencing. Um, and it's ever so easy to just almost succumb to it. But for me, the thing that keeps you sharp and the thing that keeps your ability to think outside the box is just the fact that you're thinking. Now,
Yeah.
I know that sounds really odd, but ever so, I have people talk to me all the time, and I say to them, when was the last time you read anything? When was the last time you just sat down and read an article or read a magazine or read a book or whatever to formulate your own thinking? And they go, oh, well, I couldn't do that because it's not working really, is it? Now, the
Yeah.
reality is, I get what they mean by that. It means they're not physically doing the do.
Yeah.
I get that. But the reality is, thinking as a leader, thinking is part of your job. And if
Yeah.
you're not giving yourself the time and space to do that, you will never come up with a solution that gets you out of a problem that you've
Mhm.
created using the same mindset.
Yeah.
You have to step
Absolutely.
outside of that.
Yeah.
And so for me, this whole idea about thinking outside the box is getting people to value one of the skills that they have as a leader, which is just sitting down and thinking about what's happening and
Yeah.
what might be.
Yeah.
The whole idea of scenario planning, incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
And I wanted really to get people to consider that.
Yeah. And do you know what? And I read yesterday whilst doom scrolling, as you do. But Stephen Bartlett is quite a big
Yeah, yeah.
feature on my scroll. And there was a piece yesterday that he put out that was saying that we need to write because writing is thinking.
Yes.
And it's so true. And it just resonates so much with what you're saying because I mean, I was before I did everything I do now. I was a PA and a secretary and stuff. So I've always been able to type at high speed. So I prefer typing. Nowadays my hands hurt, so I tend to not write. But I'll sit and type stuff out. And even if I might type it out on a document, or I might type it out, I might type it into chat and go, I've got a whole board panel on chat now,
Mm,
which is just like is mad, but it's like a sounding board. So
yeah.
even just the thought of like writing out a huge prompt that you're going to ask chat gpt for support, even just that process, because it allows your mind to tick over and to document the problem that you've got and just make you consider, actually, do I even need to hit return on that? Because
Yeah.
even just the process of writing that out has made my cogs whir. And
Yeah.
I think that's the thing, isn't it? We are missing that cog whirring. And
We are, and also one of the other downsides is that, to a degree, if you're using AI to do a lot of your business planning and a lot of direction setting and stuff, one of the things that you have to realise is, depending on which chat GPT you're using, or which AI tool you're using, um, it's it's a sycophantic tool.
massively.
It will just tell
It
you
just
that you're
it does
brilliant at
tickle me when
everything.
it's like, oh, that's a really great idea,
Yeah.
Sue. And it's like, would you actually like to refrain from like doing that? Because it's just, I quite often tell it off for doing things like that because I don't want to hear that. You're going to use it as a, I think it's, and actually, because we're so many of us are solos and we run our businesses ourselves,
Mm,
and we may have other people that help and support us, but mainly we're the decision makers.
yeah.
And I think that I do tend to use it as a sounding board just to try and rationalize.
Mm,
And it will give me like three different things that it thinks about what I'm saying. So then I can go, actually, because I think it's just when you're on your own, you don't always have that, other company director that
yeah.
you can talk things through with.
Absolutely.
And you may
Absolutely.
not want to speak publicly or to anybody to share that secret or,
Yeah.
that piece of confidential business information. Not that it's going to be that confidential once it's on ChatGPT, let's face it, but
Well, unless you've changed your settings, of course.
yeah.
It
Yeah.
is that though, isn't it? Because when we talk about it, one of and I do have a fear about this. I think that we're losing our ability to deal with any sort of meaningful critique or
Mm,
criticism. And whilst that might be a nicer place to live, where you don't have to, justify your own actions or justify your decisions or whatever, it's not reality.
no.
And so for me, the critical thinking and the critical analysis is absolutely about that. It's about saying, is the idea that you have, or is the solution that you've just created, does it stand up to scrutiny?
Yeah.
Because if it doesn't, you need to know before you launch it out
Mm.
onto the wider world, rather
Yeah.
than wait until it's out there and then have people throw rocks at
Yeah,
you.
absolutely. And I know one of the things that you talk about in the article, and it's such a classic business tool, is the old SWOT analysis
Yes,
and the
yeah,
gap analysis.
yeah,
And I think that, sometimes when you do feel like back against the wall, just doing, even if you literally just write down that, do the cross and
yeah,
just do this 4 squares and just write down even one thing in each of those corners, just so you can get a little bit of balance. Because I think so much of it is that you just feel when you're back against the wall, all you can see is the weaknesses and the threats. That's all you.
yes, yeah.
And sometimes you need that balance of like the strengths and the whatever the O's gone. What's gone?
Opportunities.
Opportunities.
And I mean, for me, one of the things that I do when I'm getting people to do a SWOT analysis,
Mm,
particularly if they're in that place where they are a bit doom and gloom, is that I will talk to them about doing the strengths and the opportunities first,
yeah,
and then follow up with the weaknesses and the threats,
yeah,
because most people will gravitate towards the weaknesses and the threats first,
yeah,
and you dig yourself into a hole that's so deep there's
yeah,
no coming back from that.
yeah,
So for me, it's about the order and trying to balance and bring some
yeah,
objectivity to the way you use a tool like that.
yeah,
But it always makes me smile, because I mean, my goodness me, that tool has been around for generations.
yeah.
We've seen SWOT analyses, and yet sometimes the simplest tools can be the ones that help us the most.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things I had to take away from a business coach a few years ago, and he'd added to the SWOT analysis and he'd put in A and L. So he had like an all SWOT analysis of achievements and lessons. And I think, especially if you've been trading for a while, looking and recognizing what you've achieved and the lessons you've learned
Yes,
is a
yeah.
really valuable part of it.
Mm,
Because, and I think it's worth sometimes pulling that out as a separate thing
mm,
to analyze and work out. So I tend to keep that in my mind quite a lot whenever I'm looking at SWOT analysis, because, and even down to doing things like, write down, just sit for half an hour and write down every single achievement you can think of from when you learned to walk through to what you did last week and what you achieved last week. And just write down, or pick 50 things or 20 things to write down what achievements you've had. Because I think we sometimes felt, like you say, people jump to that weaknesses and the threats because they're sitting in that place and it's easier to criticize ourselves and to lift ourselves.
mm, mm.
And I think sometimes recognizing what we've actually managed to achieve so far in life is a huge factor.
I think that's very true, and in a way, it's part of thinking outside the box, because you can only think outside the box and be creative if you're in that right mindset. And if
Mm,
all you're seeing in front of you is the doom and gloom,
yeah,
what will happen is that your brain goes into sort of that rescue mode, the fight or flight,
yeah,
and it will freeze. It will stop feeding you information because it feels that it needs to keep you safe and it needs to keep you protected from what's
yeah,
happening. So very often, if you spend too much time in that doom and gloom space, it will rob you of your creativity.
yeah,
And
yeah,
there are things that you can do to sort of kick you, and I included a few of those in the article, the
yeah,
things that you can use to spark that creativity.
yeah,
And they seem simple and actually quite silly things, but they're really, really important. And if you want
yeah,
to activate that left brain creativity, then there are things that you can do to make that happen.
yeah. So what kind of, so let's have an example of one of them, just so people have got something to take away from our chat today. So
So
what?
I'll give you an example of one of the things that I do all of the time. So if I'm stuck in a space and I know I need to be more creative, one of the things that I'll do is I will involve myself in a really sensory activity.
Mhm,
So I trained many years ago, I trained as an aromatherapist. So
yeah,
I'll mix myself an oil and I'll give myself a hand or a foot massage. Um, Anything that activates your senses is
yeah,
going to activate that left-hand side of the brain.
yeah,
So anything that involves smells, anything that involves taste, anything that involves touch, anything that involves visual stimulation, color is a great one.
yeah.
These are all things that you can do that will trigger activity in that side of your brain that will allow creativity to come to the surface.
Mhm, yeah. And I think as well, and even what you're saying, just a diversion from that negative
Yes.
mind talk that you might have going on, and just diversion alone. But if you can do that with something that is like an interest or a passion that you have,
Mm,
um, then that's going to push your mind into a place where maybe you might be able to find flow and actually have that moment where everything, because I'm sure like what you're describing with like doing the aromatherapy and stuff is it's letting the brain just kind of simplify so
yes.
that the thought patterns can restart
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and just allow, and it is this. I mean, I'm studying Ikigai at the moment, and so I've just been doing all about this at the weekend, and all about that, the passions and the interests, and how if you have a passion, it's passion that's going to get you into a place of flow far more.
Exactly. Yeah.
So if you like drawing, or I don't know, you like running, or you like walking your dog, all of those things, being out in nature, all of those things are going to help to allow your mind to calm and allow the rational thought to come through,
Yeah. Yeah. That's
and even
exactly
to
it.
remember things. And even, I mean, I do it. I tend to do it when I have words that disappear from my head, like opportunities disappeared just now. But even then, just going off and doing something else. Quite often, you'll find when the brain isn't overstimulated by terror and fear of not being able to remember the word.
Yeah. Yeah.
Once you actually calm the mind, the word will normally come through
That's
because the
exactly
brain
it.
then goes into the right pattern of thought.
That's it exactly. That your brain has this way of trying to keep you safe, which by and large is usually a very good thing. But during times like this, when you are trying to think creatively and you're stuck in that place,
Mm.
it can be not very helpful. So
Yeah,
it's about invest some time and find out what works for you. So
yeah.
there are a couple of things. I've got like a squeezy tension ball that I use. Anything like that. If I just sit there and I just roll my fingers around that for, just 5, yeah, that's it.
I know.
Absolutely.
I picked this up from a lovely lady called Dipsy Tate, and she was threw them around the room at us. But they're brilliant. They're so
Yeah.
good.
And just that activity of sense of touch, the
Mm,
texture, it's
yeah,
going to do what you need it to do. It
yeah,
doesn't have to be something, taking yourself into the middle of a green field and sitting and meditating for 40 minutes. It doesn't have to be like that. It can
no,
be little things that mean something to you. It's got to be pleasurable. That's the other
yeah,
key.
yeah.
So find things. I once I once went on a program with about mindfulness with a Buddhist monk called Adam, who was a fascinating guy, absolutely fascinating. And he said that the thing that he did, having trained as a Buddhist monk for, I think he trained for 6 years, in Nepal, eating nothing but cauliflower. Don't ask.
Wow.
And he said one of the things that he used to use to get him in the right space was a single chocolate button, which he used to put on his tongue, and he used to just let it melt. That was it.
Oh, I can feel that one.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. It
yeah.
doesn't have to be complex.
No, no. Isn't and I can feel myself even salivating at the
Yes,
thought,
yeah,
because it does it, because you've got like all of that memory like system
exactly.
that kicks in to tell you actually this is going to be really nice, especially if
Yes,
it's Cadbury's Dairy Milk or
yeah.
Galaxy. So one of the other things that you spoke about in the article was about gap analysis. And I think in our industry, there's so many gaps that we can plug. And we tend to focus. It's funny, I was just talking to someone the other day about niching and how we've been told we've got a niche, which for some things is a good idea, but not always. And so we have multiple gaps that we can fill if we don't niche down into like a microcosm of what we could provide. And actually, even like your view on the whole niching thing would probably be quite interesting, because the gaps are there because so many people have niched, I feel. So maybe it's time to start. I know for another friend of mine has got a big, and she's in the magazine as a generalist, and there is a whole thing about, you know, being broad maybe in these times is more beneficial than niching. I don't know. What would your thoughts be on that?
I think that this is going to sound a bit mad, but let me just go through it. So I think we're all generalists with niches for particular products that we're expert at.
Yeah.
So I'm not the sort of person that says you have to niche, so you become a category of one.
Yeah.
And that's the only thing that you do, because that's not the way the world is built at the moment. When you have a very affluent economy and when you have lots of people spending lots of money, you can afford to niche.
Yeah.
I think our economy at the moment means that there has to be an element of generalism in what you do, just literally to keep the lights on and the doors open.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
and I know that can be a bit controversial, but for me, that is absolutely the thing. And I think your niching is really around how you stand out from people around you.
Yeah.
And for me, your biggest benefit or your biggest asset for niching is you as an individual. You know, and this is very much the case, particularly with hairdressers. I've been thinking a lot about hairdressers recently. And in all of the conversations I've ever had about how somebody chooses a hairdresser, they don't give their loyalty to a hairdresser because of the salon or because of the products that they use. They give it to the individual.
Yeah,
It's an
absolutely.
intensely personal relationship. And yet I don't see many hairdressers make the use of the fact of who they are.
Yeah. But then I think that comes into a lot of the work that I do with people about people are fearful of being the person. They're fearful,
Yes.
especially and even more so in today's world of like the solo business owner, is that, you know, when our industry was more formatted to salon work and being an employee or being a manager or whatever in a salon, you could hide behind the salon owner and the brand of the salon. So if you worked for Jones and Co. hairdressers, Jones and Co. were the ones that did everything, and you could just do your job in there every day. And people would come to you, and they'd probably come to you initially because they heard good things about Jones and Co. And then they find, oh, actually, she's quite a nice hairdresser or a nice therapist or whatever. So I'm gonna carry on going to them because I like the person. And I think we do forget that we are our brand, and that if you want to be a solo and you want to be self-employed and you want to be the brand owner and the business owner, with that comes a responsibility to step up and be seen and be recognized as the person behind the brand. And it's really hard. And I know, I can remember the first time I ever did my podcast, I was terrified. I think we'd been around each other a little bit. And I can remember starting it just thinking, like, this is like, how am I ever going to have anyone listen to my voice? How am I going to? And I wasn't so bad. I'd done a few lives and stuff and a few videos. I think we'd all got quite used to Zoom. But the fact of knowing that it's going to be out there and your head's above the parapet and people have an opinion, and that you could be judged, because I think that's most people's fear.
Oh gosh, hugely.
Get judged. But I think we have to recognise that with that being the solopreneur, you have to have a level of accountability for your actions and being the person behind the business. And that's hard sometimes. And imposter syndrome comes in, procrastination comes in, fear of all the different things I've just said comes in. And I think, we've really got to work. And I think a lot of that will make people feel that boxed in feeling of like, how am I ever going to be able to do this? I need my business to be doing more, but I can't do freight. I can't go and do a live. I can't do videos on my website. I can't do that stuff because people will see me. And I think that that's a horrible thing for people to feel.
It is, but it's the moment of lunacy that I don't understand about your industry. So your industry is based on intimate relationships
Yeah,
between the person who's giving the therapy and the person receiving the therapy, whether that's a haircut or a massage or whatever it is.
yeah,
You have the most intimate relationships. People tell
absolutely.
you things because they've grown to trust you, and then you have a difficulty about being seen. I
Yeah,
don't get that.
no, it's really weird, isn't it? And
Yeah.
I don't know. I know I'm trying. There's a few of us that are trying to help people overcome that. And and we do quite a lot of. I mean, I've studied hypnotherapy a while ago so that I can help people because it's just. I know I struggled with it and it was hard, but like everything, once you've done it a few times, it starts to become easier. But if you're stuck in a place where you can't get beyond the fear,
Mm.
or you can't get beyond whatever the obstacle is that's holding you back, you're only ever going to hold your business back, and you're
Yeah.
only going to stay in that boxed in feeling and being unable to progress and being unable to grow and all those other things that come with it. It is difficult, but yeah, but I don't know why it's so hard for. I don't know. I suppose we I suppose a lot of the time we're there to serve. I suppose is like so much of it. Maybe I don't know that we see
It
ourselves. I
is,
think
but the
there's a
what?
definite, and it's a self-proclaimed kind of diminishing of our abilities. There's an awful lot of I'm just a that goes on in our
Yes, yeah,
industry,
I get that. I get
and
that.
I think that is part of the problem, that we don't claim the fact that I'm an amazing masseur. We don't claim that. We just go, oh, I just do massage.
But in the world, and this is one of the things that when I talk about the fact that we're living in a world that is almost without precedent at the moment, the world has changed so much and been changed so much by social media in particular,
Mm,
and AI to a certain degree, that the old rules just don't
no,
stand scrutiny anymore. We've all got to step up and we've all got to behave differently if we want to be heard and seen above the noise that's in
yeah,
the system. I
yeah,
mean, I remember when I first started in sales, like 40 years ago, more than 40 years ago now. And when I first started in sales, it was a lot of it was paper marketing material, so leaflets and stuff. And it took you six leaflets, six touch points to get onto somebody's radar. So if you were a Domino's, it would be on the sixth leaflet that would pop through somebody's door
yeah,
that suddenly they'd register, oh, there must be a Domino's somewhere close.
yeah,
Because that's how we take information in. Nowadays, Sue, that has gone up to 29
yeah,
29 touch points before you're even on somebody's radar.
yeah,
And that's because there's so much noise in the system.
yeah,
It just strikes me as common sense that if you want to be seen, you have to not be doing what everybody else is doing. You have
yeah,
to be able to come up with a particularly different approach or a different message or something that sets you aside, and you won't do that by thinking what you've always thought. You
yeah,
you have to stand outside of yourself and think differently to do
yeah.
that.
And I think that it's very difficult, isn't it? I think like as an industry, we tend to do, and I'm sure that anybody listening to this that is in the industry or not in the industry that happens to be listening to this will recognize that the hair and beauty and wellness industry, or maybe not wellness so much, but definitely hair and beauty, it's all like, oh, have a look at these beautiful nails. Have a look at the before the haircut and the after the haircut. And we tend to like we're defined by our results, when actually what we need to be defined by is the experience that people are going to have when they come to us. We need to be defined by the kind of person that we are that runs the business, because that's what people connect to and that's what people come back to again and again.
That's a really important point, Sue, because some of the top in your industry, some of the most viewed videos on YouTube are Americans who have got salons, who go out and who give haircuts to the homeless.
Yeah,
And it's watching the transition from coming in being a bit of a crusty and, hair sprouting out of everywhere, to sending somebody out with dignity.
Yeah.
That's what people are interested in.
Yeah.
And it's a real classic case in point. People aren't interested in what you do. They're not interested in, what dryer you use, or, what your products are, or what furniture you've got in your salon. What they're interested in is the transformation that you're able to get. And this is
Mhm.
really, really interesting. The number of people when they come out of hospital, if they've been in hospital for a while or whatever, maybe have had a really difficult circumstance, they start to feel themselves after their first shower and their first haircut.
Yeah. Yeah.
That brings back that normality, the fact that you can do your hair, the fact that you can feel like
Yeah.
you've invested a bit of time in yourself. That's the essence
Yeah.
of what your industry does for people,
Yeah.
day
It,
in, day out.
yeah. How it is, and I think we lose touch with the fact it's how we make people feel.
Yes, yeah, yeah,
And and I know we've had these conversations for years about and even like, I mean, we met during the pandemic, and it was at a point when I was able to grow my hair. I've just had mine chopped off again because I couldn't cope with trying to grow it anymore. um but but just that I actually felt normal when
yeah,
I'd withheld having my hair cut because I was like, I'm going to grow it down again, I'm going to do that. And I went the other day, I had a wedding we were going to, and it was like, I cannot go. I physically feel ugh, just horrible because I knew it's not how I want it to look.
mm,
I'm in between everything. And it's like, do you know what? The easier thing is to go back and see my hairdresser. She was like, you're supposed to be growing it. And I'm like, I know, but I can't. I'm done. And so she's got, are you sure? Because obviously I have my hair very short.
mm,
And she's like, are you sure? And I'm like, yeah, I've got no qualms. We still keep talking about whether I'm ever going to go for a number one or a number two. But she cut it, and it was, and she said to me afterwards, like, the visible difference in how you
yes,
feel and how you can
yeah,
see you feel you.
yeah,
And we had this whole conversation about, I actually felt back to myself
mm,
by having my hair cut.
mm,
And we do that whether it's nails, whether it's someone having a facial, whether it's someone having their lashes done, having a spray tan, having an aromatherapy massage. We do that to people all day, every day.
yes,
And that's
absolutely.
where our magic is. That's the special source of what we do.
Yeah, it is absolutely.
And
But when you talk about, when I see things on social media, Instagram and all of that around what people are doing, very rarely is about that transformation and about
yeah,
that feel good factor.
yeah,
And you know what? In this day and age, while we're all thinking very carefully about what we're spending our money on, um, lots of people, particularly women, lots of people
mm,
will say, do you know what? If I've only got, I don't know, if I've only got a few quid to spend, should I spend it on myself? But
yeah,
if that's the difference of putting you in a place where suddenly you feel like yourself and you can knock the world over and you can look after anybody who asks
yeah.
for sort of support, it's worth it.
That's it. And actually, bringing this back round to where we started this last bit of the conversation about the gap analysis is like, and that's the magic bit, is that
It is.
we can do if people are strapped for cash, we know that we can make someone feel better. I mean, maybe hair's difficult because it's a very finite, you're going to go in and have a cut and blow dry, or you're going to go and have a trim or whatever, and it's a very finite thing. You can't really change your timings on that. But for so much else that we do in the industry, and particularly if you're in the more wellness and massage side of the industry, you can do very short burst treatments that are affordable for people,
Yeah.
that will give them a lift and will transform their mood and transform, that their achy shoulder. If a 20-minute, and it's funny actually, I've just had in my massage business side at the moment, I've just had lots more people booking for back massages. Normally I get a lot of full bodies, but I'm noticing a trend at the moment where people are downsizing their treatments, and that's fine. And they may even be downsizing, they might have come every month, and now they're coming every other month because they've got to be more
Yeah.
budgetary or whatever. But it's about, give them services, isn't it? It's like, if people don't want to not have that stuff done, so give them a different way to do it and
But
check
that's
what that
that's the
gap is.
whole essence of the gap analysis,
Mm,
because a gap analysis isn't something that you do once and then forget about it. Gap analysis is driven by the fact that people's motivations for buying changes.
Yeah.
So at the moment, we're absolutely in one of those phases where people's buying priorities have changed.
Mm.
Now, if you as a business are still going on information that you were using 5 years ago, you're going to struggle because
Yeah.
why people spent money with you 5 years ago is not why they're going to spend money with you today.
No.
And so
No.
the gap analysis helps you to keep up to date with what's happening,
Yeah.
and what those changes are. And that's where AI can be a fantastic tool because
Yeah.
it's done so much of the sort of scrolling through and analysing and data gathering that everybody's using it for at the moment. It's probably the expert on what the gap is in
Yeah.
terms of your industry. But
Yeah.
don't look at it from your point of view, look at it from your customer's point
Yeah.
of view
You
and
see,
ask where the gap is there.
yeah. And even using there's that brilliant site, I'm sure it's called Ask the Public. Go on there,
Answer the
see what,
public.
yeah, just
Answer
Ask
the
the Public.
public.
And there's so many people out there. Ask the Public is brilliant
Yeah,
because
it is.
it tells you what people are searching.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
that you might find there's a whole lot of people that are searching for how can I have X treatment done at a fraction of the cost? Or, is there a way to reduce my costs if I want to go and have a beauty treatment or whatever? There's going to be, and you can write blog articles, start putting out your social media, all of those things, build your SEO around it. I mean, the thing is, and if you know this stuff, it's easy, it's much easier, isn't it? But if you're recently starting up and you have no idea what SEO is, go and ask
Yeah.
somebody, because
Yeah.
it's a whole other conversation. But it's one of the ways that you can start getting people, and you can attract people differently into your business. So it's like, yeah, there's many ways that we can appeal to people, and we can fill those gaps. And I think you were saying in the article about men, are you missing men, or are you missing teenagers, or whatever?
Mm.
And at the moment, I don't know if you're a Radio 2 listener, but I listen to Radio 2 all day, every day. It's always on in the background. And Vernon Kay, love him, has been doing just huge things for our industry. He's just been out, I saw it on his Instagram. I've actually put a blog on the Salonpreneur website about it, because he went off to a beauty salon and went and had a whole skin analysis done. And she's told him about all of his sun damage and all these different things, that the problems and the challenges that his skin is currently facing. But he is now advocating hugely for our industry by talking about male skincare.
Mm.
That is one of the biggest gaps, because men
Yeah,
are becoming,
absolutely.
and especially the millennials and the Gen Zs, are
Yeah.
very, very much more into their skincare.
Mm.
And don't miss that opportunity. It is a huge gap that's there and available.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So, yeah. And I think, if you've got someone as prominent as Vernon Kay talking about basically talking about your business and promoting, your industry, utilize it.
I would wholeheartedly agree with that, Sue, because he's not the sort of usual suspect that you would expect. So he's very much a blokey bloke, isn't he? And so for lots of people,
Yeah,
they wouldn't
definitely.
they'd feel comfortable with him talking about football or whatever it is. But it's unusual to hear somebody with
Yeah,
his public profile talking about something as intimate as male
yeah,
skincare. Um, that shows you
yeah,
that the world is changing. And he's feeling
yeah,
able to do that for whatever reason.
yeah,
Therefore, we know motivations have changed. That
yeah.
is the first sign of how to spot a gap in the market.
And even down to, just, with knowing my husband's in the building trade. So we've been around tradesmen for years. Tradesmen are the least likely men to ever really go into,
Yeah,
into a salon.
yeah,
However, they're also, for some elements of the trades, a lot of them are working outside. They have massive skincare issues because they aren't using SPF. Just like,
yeah.
and men, when men start buying retail, this a whole different ballgame to women buying retail, because they don't have the same boundaries and filters that we have as women and mothers, because we go, oh no, I've got to feed my children later, whereas men, predominantly, it is reported that they don't necessarily have those
Well,
filters.
they don't. They look at it, think I need that, and buy it.
Yeah,
It's yeah. And these are generalizations we have to
yes,
say.
very,
Not
very
all men are like
generalizing.
that, absolutely. but there are some generalizations that you can use.
Yeah. And I think, if you can find speak to your local scaffolding firm, local roofing firm, local gardeners, all those people that need to be outside and they are out in all weathers, the bin men, they're out there all day, every day, and all of them are going to have SPF requirements. They could all do with a little bit of exfoliation and a little bit of turning that skin over, So literally think outside the box with it, because there's so many different genres of people that wouldn't normally come for a treatment that you can tap into.
Yeah.
If you think about the ones that may be making more money currently, and think about the industries where there's people that might have more disposable income, it's just it is all about thinking outside the box, isn't it?
It is. It absolutely is.
Yeah. Anyway, we probably should leave it there. I think we put the whole world to rights in half an hour, Wendy.
Again.
As always. So thank you so much for coming on. And I really hope that everyone that's listening has found that really, really useful today. Thank you.
Lovely. Thanks for having me, Sue.
That's okay.